So here are the stitches that I picked up from the cast on at the beginning, and I've removed the scrap yarn. So all of these stitches on this end of the tube are now on a needle. And here is where I ended, where the instructions told me to now bind off. And here is my working yarn, and it is still attached to the ball. So what we want to do is we want to connect this first stitch with this first stitch. So we will knit this stitch and this stitch together, then we'll knit this stitch and this stitch together, and then lift the first stitch over the second stitch, just like you would in a regular bind off. So let me get my needles into the stitches here. All right. So we're going to take this first stitch and this first stitch and knit them together, which is a little bit fiddly, but that's okay. And then we're going to do the same thing with the second stitch. Knit those two together. So now I have two stitches on my right needle. I'm going to take this first one and bind it off. I'm going to pull it over the second one. And now I just continue doing that process. Knit two together. And then when I have two on this needle, I bind off the first one. And so you just keep doing that all the way around your loop or your tube until they're all bound off. And then when you have one stitch left, you just pull your working yarn through that last loop. Now when you use the 3-needle bind off, you are going to get a horizontal ridge going across your vertical stitching. So, oops. What I'm saying is your stitches are vertical on your fabric, and this 3-needle bind off is going to create this horizontal ridge, so it's going to be very obvious where you seamed it. When I get to the end of this side, I'm going to switch to Kitchener stitch, and let's see, I dropped a stitch here somewhere. Oh well. I'm going to switch to Kitchener stitch, so that you can see the difference there. Okay, so this is what the 3-needle bind off is going to look like on your scarf. You're going to have this horizontal bump or ridge going across your knitting. Now if you're going to do Kitchener stitch, you should end up having a nice flat seam. So I cut the yarn here, and let me find the end of it here. I'm going to just thread it through a tapestry needle and run it through this last stitch here. Okay. So now we're just going to turn the work to the other side so that we can do the bottom of the tube. But this time we're going to do Kitchener stitch. So let me get my things all entangled here. Okay. Okay, so when you do Kitchener stitch, the setup is put your needle into the first stitch purlwise, pull that through, and then on the back needle put your stitch through knitwise and pull that through. Snug that up, and now you're ready to begin Kitchener stitch. On the front needle, put your needle in knitwise, slip it off, and purlwise leave it on. Then you go to the back needle, purlwise off, knitwise leave it on. And as you're pulling your thread through, make sure it stays down below the needles. Back to the front needle, knit off, purl on, and now the back needle, purl off, knit on. I'm sorry, it looks like I'm off camera. I'll try to stay in the shot here better. The front needle is knit off. Here we go. Knit off and purl on. The back needle is go purlwise off and knitwise leave it on. So you're always removing the first stitch and leaving the second stitch on both needles. And on the front needle, you knit first and purl second there. And on the back needle, you purl first and knit second. Knit off, purl on, purl off, knit on, knit off, purl on, and then in the back needle, purl off, knit on. Front needle, knit off, purl on. The back needle, purl off, knit on. Front needle, knit off, purlwise on. The back needle, purlwise off, knitwise leave it on. Front needle, knitwise off, purlwise on. Back needle is purl off, and then we're gonna knit that one off, and then we'll attach that in. But when you do the Kitchener stitch, you have a much more invisible seam than you did on the other side with your 3-needle bind off. So if I were doing that scarf, I would go ahead and do this because it's much more invisible than this. But if you like this, this can be a design element, and go for it. Hope this helps.